Princess Siralith sat in her father's throne room, her hands folded in her lap. She tried to keep them still, but they shook slightly. The grand hall was silent except for the soft hum of the crystal pillars that held up the ceiling. Her father, Emperor Thalcrin, stood before her with a grave expression on his face. "My daughter," he said slowly, "I have called you here to discuss a matter of great importance." Siralith felt her heart beat faster. When her father used that tone, it was never good news. She had seen him use it before declaring war, before announcing the death of nobles, before making decisions that changed lives forever. "Yes, father," she replied, keeping her voice steady. The emperor walked to the large window that overlooked their capital city. The buildings gleamed like jewels in the sunlight. Their people moved through the streets below, unaware of what was about to happen. "We are facing a crisis," he said. "The human-Terran coalition has become too powerful to ignore. What we once thought of as a weak species has proven us wrong." Siralith had heard about the humans. Everyone in the galaxy had heard about them. They came from a planet called Earth, a world so dangerous that most species would have died there. Yet somehow the humans had survived and thrived. They had spread across the stars with shocking speed. The recent battle at the border was a disaster. Her father continued. "We lost 3 of our best ships. The humans lost none. They fight with a ferocity we have never encountered before. But we have the largest fleet in the sector," Siralith said. "Surely we can—" "No," her father interrupted. "We cannot afford a war with them, not now. Perhaps not ever." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear. "What do you need from me?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "The humans have proposed a peace treaty, but they want more than words on paper. They want a bond between our people. A marriage." The word hung in the air like a stone. Siralith felt her breath catch in her throat. "A marriage?" she repeated. "Between you and one of their military officers, a captain named Jake Morrison." Siralith stood up so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. "No, father, you cannot ask this of me. I am not asking, my child. I am telling you this is what must happen. But they are humans," she said, her voice rising. "They are monsters. Everyone knows the stories." Her father's expression softened slightly. "I know what you have heard. I know what frightens you. They eat meat from living creatures," Siralith said, counting off on her fingers. "They come from a world with poisonous plants, deadly animals, and extreme weather. They refuse to surrender even when they should. They are violent and unpredictable. They are also honorable," her father said. "Or so their diplomats claim. And they are offering us peace. All we have to do is accept this union." "All?" Siralith laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You ask me to bind my life to a creature we barely understand, to live with a predator from a death world. I ask you to save our empire," her father said firmly. "Millions of lives depend on this treaty. Would you sacrifice them to avoid this marriage?" Siralith wanted to scream, to run, to refuse, but she had been raised as a princess. She had been taught duty before desire, responsibility before happiness. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "When?" she asked quietly. "The ceremony will take place in 3 weeks, on Concordia Prime, the neutral station. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks of freedom left. 3 weeks before her life changed forever. "May I be excused?" she asked. Her father nodded. "Your brother and Kiranel will accompany you. You will not face this alone." Small comfort, she thought. But she bowed respectfully and left the throne room. Siralith walked through the palace corridors in a daze. Servants bowed as she passed, but she barely noticed them. Her mind was spinning with thoughts of the future. What would this human be like? Would he be cruel? Would he hurt her? Would he expect her to become like humans, eating their food and following their strange customs? She reached her private chambers and found her handmaiden Kiranel waiting inside. "My lady," Kiranel said, taking one look at her face. "What has happened?" Siralith sat down on her bed and told her everything. Kiranel listened in silence, her eyes growing wider with each word. "A human," Kiranel whispered when Siralith finished. "Oh, my lady, I have heard such terrible things about them." "As have I," Siralith said, "and now I must marry one." "Perhaps the stories are exaggerated," Kiranel suggested, though she did not sound convinced. "Or perhaps they are not," Siralith replied. "Perhaps they are worse than we know." That night, Siralith could not sleep. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about Earth. She had seen images of it once in a cultural database. It was a blue and green planet, beautiful from space. But she knew what hid beneath that beauty. Oceans that could drown you, storms that could destroy cities, animals with sharp teeth and claws, and humans had conquered it all. What kind of species could survive such a place? Her brother, Prince Velkoth, came to see her the next morning. He was tall and strong, a warrior trained in the old ways. He looked furious. "This is wrong," he said without greeting.
"Father cannot force you into this." "He can," Saralith said.
"And he has. Then I will go with you. I will protect you from this human if he tries anything." Saralith smiled despite everything. "Thank you, brother. But I do not think your presence will change what I must do." "Perhaps not," Velkoth said. "But you will not face it alone. If this human wishes to harm you, he will have to go through me first." The days passed too quickly. Saralith tried to learn everything she could about humans. She read reports, watched videos, studied their history. The more she learned, the more terrified she became. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues. They had fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. They had created weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They had sent machines to other worlds before they even invented faster-than-light travel. They were determined, relentless, and seemingly unstoppable. And she was going to marry one of them. On the day before her departure, her father called her to his chambers. He looked tired, older than she remembered. "I know this is difficult," he said. "I know you are afraid. If there was another way, I would take it." "I understand," Saralith said, and she did. It did not make it easier, but she understood. "The humans promise that Captain Morrison is a good man. They assured us he will treat you with respect." "Promises are easy to make," Saralith said. Her father had no answer to that. He simply embraced her, something he had not done since she was a child. The next morning, Saralith boarded the ship that would take her to Concordia Prime. She looked back at her homeworld one last time. The planet gleamed like a pearl against the darkness of space. She wondered if she would ever see it again. She wondered if she would survive long enough to come home. As the ship entered faster-than-light travel, Saralith closed her eyes. Somewhere ahead of her on that neutral station, a human named Jake Morrison was waiting. In 3 days he would become her husband. The thought made her tremble with fear. She had been brave her entire life. She had faced challenges and overcome them. But this was different. This was not an enemy she could fight or a problem she could solve. This was her future, chosen for her, unavoidable. All she could do was face it, and hope that somehow she would survive what was coming. The space station Concordia Prime was enormous. Saralith stood at the viewing port of her transport ship and stared at it. The station was neutral ground, belonging to no single empire or coalition. It was where different species met to trade, negotiate, and sometimes make peace. Today, it would be where she married a human. "We are beginning our approach," the pilot announced over the communication system. "We will dock in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Saralith's hands gripped the railing in front of her so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. Beside her, Kiranel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Breathe, my lady," Kiranel said softly. "Remember to breathe." Saralith realized she had been holding her breath. She let it out slowly and tried to calm herself. It did not work very well. Behind them, Prince Velkoth paced back and forth. He had been doing that for the entire journey. His hand kept moving to the weapon at his side, as if checking it was still there. "If this human shows any sign of aggression," Velkoth muttered. "Any sign at all." "You will do nothing," Saralith said firmly. "This marriage is meant to create peace, not start a war. I will not stand by and watch you be harmed." "I know," Saralith said. "But you must trust me to handle this." The ship docked with a soft thud. Saralith straightened her robes and checked her appearance in the polished metal wall. She looked pale, frightened. She tried to compose her features into something more dignified. A princess should not show fear. The door opened and they walked into the station. A protocol officer, a tall insect-like being from the Chitauri species, greeted them with a bow. "Princess Saralith, welcome to Concordia Prime. Your quarters have been prepared. The ceremony will take place tomorrow evening in the Grand Hall." "Thank you," Saralith said. "Has the human delegation arrived?" "Captain Morrison arrived 2 days ago. He has requested a private meeting with you before the ceremony if you are willing." Saralith felt her heart skip. "A private meeting?" "Yes, he suggested a neutral location. The observation deck on level 7. He said there is no pressure and you may decline if you wish. Part of Seralith wanted to decline. She wanted to delay meeting him for as long as possible. But another part of her, the curious part, wanted to see what kind of man she was about to marry. I will meet him, she said. When? He is there now, actually. Waiting, so soon. She had hoped for more time, but perhaps it was better this way. Like jumping into cold water, better to do it quickly than to stand at the edge afraid. I will come with you, Velkoth said immediately. No, Seralith said. He asked for a private meeting. I will honor that request. Seralith, brother, please. I need to do this alone. Velkoth looked like he wanted to argue but finally nodded. I will be nearby. If you need me, just call. Seralith followed the protocol officer through the station's corridors. They passed beings from dozens of different species. Some stared at her, recognizing the royal robes. Others ignored her completely. The station smelled strange, like a mixture of different atmospheres and foods and species all crammed together. They took a lift to level 7. The protocol officer gestured to a door. Through there, princess. The observation deck. Seralith stood in front of the door for a long moment. Her hand hovered over the control panel. Behind this door was a human, the human she would marry, the human she feared. She pressed the button. The door slid open. The observation deck was a large room with windows covering an entire wall. Stars filled the view, thousands of them bright against the darkness, and standing at the window looking out at space was a man. He was shorter than Seralith expected. Most species in the galaxy were taller than humans, she knew, but somehow she had imagined him as larger, more threatening. He wore a dark blue uniform with silver insignia on the shoulders. His hair was brown, cut short in a military style. When he heard the door, he turned around, and Seralith saw his face for the first time. He did not look like a monster. He looked normal, ordinary even. His eyes were a warm color, somewhere between brown and green. His face was clean-shaven. He was smiling, but it was a nervous smile, not a threatening one. Princess Seralith, he said, and his voice was steady but kind. Thank you for coming. I'm Jake Morrison. He did not move toward her. He stayed where he was, giving her space. Seralith appreciated that more than he probably knew. Captain Morrison, she said, proud that her voice did not shake. Just Jake, please, he said. If that's okay with you. She nodded slowly. Jake, would you like to sit down or stand? Whatever makes you comfortable. There were chairs near the window. Seralith moved toward them slowly, watching him carefully. He moved to a chair several feet away from her, maintaining distance. She sat down and he did the same. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat there, the stars watching them through the window. I imagine this is not how you wanted things to go, Jake said finally. I mean, getting married to a stranger, someone from a completely different species. No, Seralith admitted. It is not. Me neither, he said, and she looked at him in surprise. I know everyone thinks humans just go along with everything, but this scared me too. Still does, actually. You are afraid? The idea seemed impossible. Humans were supposed to be fearless. Of course I am, Jake said. I'm about to marry someone I've never met. Someone whose culture I barely understand. Someone who probably thinks I'm some kind of dangerous predator. Seralith felt her face grow warm. He had guessed exactly what she thought. I have heard stories, she said carefully. About humans. I bet you have, Jake said with a slight smile. Let me guess. We're violent, unpredictable, we eat meat, we come from a death world. We never surrender even when we should. Yes, Seralith said. All of those things. Well, some of that is true, Jake admitted. We do eat meat. Earth is a harsh planet compared to most. And yeah, humans can be stubborn. But we're not monsters. We're just people trying to survive like everyone else. You fought a battle against my people, Seralith said. You destroyed 3 of our ships. Jake's expression became serious. We did, and I'm sorry for the lives lost. But your ships fired first. We were defending ourselves. That is not what our reports said. Then our reports differ, Jake said calmly. I'm not going to argue about it. What's done is done. What matters now is preventing more deaths. That's why we're here. Seralith studied his face, looking for signs of deception. She had been trained to read people, to spot lies. But Jake's expression was open, honest. Either he was telling the truth or he was a very good liar. Tell me about Earth, she said suddenly. Jake looked surprised. Earth, why? Because I want to understand. Everyone says it is a death world. I want to know what that means. Jake leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. Earth is beautiful, he said quietly. It has oceans so blue they take your breath away. Mountains that touch the clouds. Forests so thick you can barely see the sky. Yes, it's dangerous. We have storms and earthquakes and animals that can kill you, but we also have butterflies and sunsets and the sound of rain on leaves. He turned back to her. Every world is dangerous in its own way. Earth made us tough, but it also made us appreciate beauty. It taught us to protect what we love. What do you love? Saralith asked. My family, Jake said without hesitation. My sister Katie, she's a teacher on one of the colony worlds. She works with kids, helping them learn. My parents died when I was young, so I raised Katie myself. She's the most important person in my life. Saralith heard the warmth in his voice when he spoke about his sister. It reminded her of how she felt about Velkoth. I have a brother, she said. He wanted to come with me today. To protect me from you, Jake smiled. I don't blame him. If Katie was in your position, I'd want to protect her too. They talked for over an hour. Jake told her about his home colony, about joining the military, about why he became a ship captain. He asked her about her world, her culture, her life as a princess. He listened when she spoke. Really listened, asking questions that showed he cared about her answers. Slowly, very slowly, Saralith felt some of her fear begin to ease. Jake was not what she expected. He was patient, kind, respectful. He did not try to touch her or move closer. He did not make demands. He just talked to her like she was a person, not a political tool. I should go, Saralith said finally, noticing how late it had gotten. The ceremony is tomorrow. Yeah, Jake said, standing up. Tomorrow. He walked with her to the door but kept his distance. At the threshold he stopped. Saralith, he said, I know you didn't choose this. Neither did I, but I want you to know something. I will never hurt you. I will never force you to do anything you don't want. And I will do everything I can to make this work. That's a promise. Saralith looked into his eyes and saw that he meant it. Thank you, Jake. She left the observation deck and found Velkoth waiting in the corridor, pacing anxiously. Are you all right? He demanded. Did he threaten you? No, Saralith said. He was kind. Velkoth looked skeptical. Kind, a human? Yes, Saralith said. He was kind. That night, lying in her temporary quarters, Saralith thought about Jake Morrison. She was still afraid, still uncertain, but for the first time since learning about the marriage, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this would not be as terrible as she feared. The wedding ceremony was the most elaborate event Concordia Prime had hosted in years. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Grand Hall. News crews from both the Valorian Empire and the Terran Coalition broadcast every moment to their respective worlds. This was not just a wedding. It was a symbol of peace, a promise that two powerful civilizations could coexist. Saralith stood in a preparation room, wearing the traditional blue and silver robes of a Valorian bride. Kiranel fussed with the fabric, making sure everything was perfect. In the mirror, Saralith barely recognized herself. She looked like a princess from a story, beautiful and composed, but inside her heart was racing. You look magnificent, my lady, Kiranel said softly. I look terrified, Saralith replied. That too, Kiranel admitted with a small smile. But that is allowed. Even princesses are allowed to be afraid on their wedding day. There was a knock at the door. Velkoth entered wearing his formal military armor. He looked at Saralith and his expression softened. Sister, he said. It is time. Saralith took a deep breath. I am ready. Are you truly? Velkoth asked. Because we could still leave. We could take one of the ships and start a war, Saralith finished. No, brother. This is what must be done. She walked to the door, but Velkoth caught her arm gently. I spoke with the human. Jake Morrison. You did? Saralith was surprised. She had not expected that. I wanted to see what kind of man my sister was marrying. I wanted to look him in the eye. Velkoth paused. He is not what I expected. What did you expect? A warrior. A conqueror. Someone arrogant and cruel. Velkoth shook his head. Instead, I found a man who asked me about you. Who wanted to know what you liked, what made you happy, what your favorite foods were. He was nervous, Saralith. Genuinely nervous about meeting your family. Saralith felt something warm in her chest.
He was?
He cares about making a good impression, about doing right by you. Velkoth squeezed her hand. I still do not fully trust him. He is human, after all, but perhaps this will not be the disaster I feared. The ceremony began with Valorian traditions. Saralith was led into the grand hall by her brother while ancient songs played. The room was filled with crystals that reflected light in rainbow patterns across the walls. Hundreds of eyes watched her as she walked down the aisle. At the end of the aisle stood Jake Morrison. He wore a formal Terran Coalition uniform, dark blue with gold decorations on the chest. His hair was neatly combed, his posture straight. When he saw her, his eyes widened slightly and he smiled. It was a genuine smile, full of warmth. The Valorian high priest began the ceremony, chanting in the old language. Saralith and Jake stood facing each other while the priest blessed them with sacred water and spoke of unity and harmony. Jake repeated the Valorian words carefully, though Saralith could tell he had practiced them. Then came the human traditions. A human chaplain stepped forward and spoke in the common language that most species understood. He talked about love, commitment, and partnership. He asked Jake to make his vows. I, Jake Morrison, take you, Saralith, to be my wife, Jake said, his voice clear and steady. I promise to respect you, to honor your culture, and to stand by your side through whatever challenges we face. Then it was Saralith's turn. She looked into Jake's eyes and spoke her vows. I, Saralith, take you, Jake Morrison, to be my husband. I promise to give this marriage my best effort, to learn about your people and to work toward peace between our worlds. Jake pulled out a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, a simple band of silver with a small blue stone. This is an Earth tradition, he explained. The ring is a symbol of commitment. It has no beginning and no end like our marriage. He gently took her hand. His touch was warm, careful. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. The ceremony concluded with both Valorian and human music playing together. It created a strange but beautiful harmony. The assembled guests stood and applauded. Saralith and Jake were declared married, bound together by law and tradition. As they walked back down the aisle together, Jake leaned close and whispered, "You did great. That wasn't so bad, was it?" Saralith wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Not so bad. She had just married a human in front of the entire galaxy. But looking at Jake's kind face, she found herself saying, "No, not so bad." The reception was held in an adjacent hall. Tables of food from dozens of worlds were arranged around the room. Saralith noticed that Jake had made sure there were Valorian dishes available, things she could actually eat. The thought touched her. They sat at the head table while dignitaries came to offer congratulations. Some seemed genuine. Others looked uncomfortable, clearly unhappy about the union but too diplomatic to say so. Jake handled each one with grace, thanking them politely. After the formal greetings, there was dancing. Valorian music played first, and Jake surprised everyone by asking Saralith to dance. "I should warn you," he said as they moved to the floor. "I learned Valorian dancing from videos. I'm probably terrible at it. You learned to dance for me?" Saralith asked. "Of course. It's your culture. I wanted to show respect." He was not terrible, actually. A bit stiff, perhaps, and he missed a few steps, but he tried. Other couples joined them on the floor, and soon the hall was filled with swirling robes and formal uniforms. Later, human music played. It was faster, with a strong beat. Jake tried to teach Saralith some human dance moves, and she found herself actually laughing at her own awkwardness. When was the last time she had laughed? She could not remember. As the evening wore on, they were finally left alone at their table. Most of the guests had moved to other parts of the hall, talking politics and making deals. Saralith felt exhausted, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "How are you holding up?" Jake asked quietly. "I am tired," she admitted. "It has been a very long day. We can leave whenever you want. The formal part is over." They had been assigned shared quarters on the station. The thought of going there, of being alone with Jake, made Saralith's anxiety return. Jake must have noticed her expression because he added, "The quarters have 2 bedrooms. You don't have to worry about, we can take things slowly as you need." Saralith felt relief wash over her. "Thank you." They said their goodbyes and left the reception. The walk to their quarters was quiet. Saralith was very aware of Jake beside her. He was not very tall, she realized. If she wore certain shoes, she would be taller than him. Somehow that made him less intimidating. The quarters were larger than she expected. There was a main living area with comfortable furniture, a small kitchen area, and 2 bedrooms on opposite sides. Large windows showed the stars outside. "This is nice," Jake said, looking around. "Better than my quarters on the ship." "It is adequate," Saralith agreed. They stood there awkwardly, neither sure what to do next. "So," Jake said finally, "I guess we're married now." "Yes, we are." "Look, I know this is weird. For both of us. But we're going to be living together for a while, so we should probably figure out some ground rules." "Ground rules? Like, I don't know, privacy, personal space, that kind of thing." Jake ran a hand through his hair. "I want you to feel safe here. This is your home too. You can tell me if I do something that makes you uncomfortable." "All right," Saralith said. She thought for a moment. "I wake up early. I need time alone in the mornings to meditate." "That's fine. I'm not really a morning person anyway," Jake smiled. "And I sometimes work late at night doing reports and stuff. I'll try to be quiet." They established a few more rules. Knock before entering each other's bedrooms. Share the common areas equally. Be honest if something bothered them. It was strange, negotiating a marriage like a business arrangement. But it made Saralith feel more in control. "I should probably go to bed," Saralith said finally. "It has been a very long day." "Yeah, me too," Jake said. "Good night, Saralith." "Good night, Jake." Saralith went to her bedroom and closed the door. She changed out of the ceremonial robes and into comfortable sleeping clothes. Then she sat on the bed and looked at the ring on her finger. It caught the light from the stars outside. She was married. To a human, it still did not feel real. Over the following days, Saralith and Jake settled into a routine. They ate breakfast together, though their food was very different. Jake drank a hot brown liquid called coffee that smelled strange to her. Saralith preferred herbal tea. They talked about small things, the weather on their home planets, books they had read, music they enjoyed. Jake kept his promise about giving her space. He never tried to enter her bedroom without permission. He never pushed her to spend time with him. But he was always there if she wanted company, ready with a story or a joke. One evening, about a week after the wedding, Saralith could not sleep. She had a nightmare about the war, about ships exploding, about people dying. She woke up gasping, her heart pounding. She left her room and went to the main living area, hoping some water would calm her. But Jake was already there, sitting by the window and looking at the stars. He was wearing casual clothes, not his uniform. "Can't sleep?" he asked when he saw her. "I had a bad dream," she admitted. "Want to talk about it?" Saralith hesitated, then nodded. She sat down, making sure to keep a respectful distance. "I dreamed about the battle, the one between our peoples. I saw the ships destroyed. I felt responsible even though I had nothing to do with it." "That's a heavy burden to carry," Jake said softly. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "The people who died?" "Every day," Jake said. "I was there, you know. At the battle. I was commanding one of the ships. We didn't want to fight, but when your ships opened fire, we had no choice." "I am sorry," Saralith said, "for what my people did." "And I'm sorry for what mine did," Jake replied. "War is terrible. That's why this marriage matters. We can stop more deaths from happening." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. For the first time since arriving at the station, Saralith felt at peace. The diplomatic gathering was supposed to be a celebration. 3 weeks after the wedding, both empires had agreed to sign the official peace treaty. The Grand Hall of Concordia Prime was filled with officials, military officers, and representatives from neutral species who had come to witness this historic moment. Saralith wore formal robes in the colors of both her empire and the Terran coalition, a symbolic blend of blue, silver, and gold. Jake stood beside her in his dress uniform, looking calm and confident. They had been practicing their joint speech for days. "Nervous?" Jake whispered as they waited backstage. "Terrified," Saralith admitted. "I have never been good at public speaking." "You'll do fine. Just remember, we're in this together." Together. That word meant something now. Over the past weeks, Jake had become more than just a stranger she was forced to marry. He had become someone she could talk to, someone who made her laugh, someone she looked forward to seeing each morning. The ceremony began. Various officials gave speeches about peace, cooperation, and the bright future ahead. Finally, it was time for Sarilith and Jake to address the assembly. They walked onto the stage hand in hand, a gesture that had been suggested by their advisors. It showed unity. But as Sarilith stepped into the light, Jake's hand felt like more than a political statement. It felt like support, like friendship. They gave their speech without mistakes. The crowd applauded politely. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Then the explosives went off. The first blast came from the eastern side of the hall. The sound was deafening, a sharp crack that echoed off the walls. People screamed. The beautiful crystal decorations shattered, raining glass down on the crowd. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see. Sarilith felt Jake grab her arm and pull her down behind the podium. "Stay low," he shouted over the chaos. A second explosion followed, then a third. The hall descended into panic. People ran in every direction, pushing and shoving. Security forces tried to establish order, but it was impossible. The lights flickered and went out, leaving only emergency lighting that cast everything in a red glow. "We need to move," Jake said urgently. "This area isn't safe." "My brother," Sarilith gasped. "Where is Velkoth?" "I don't know, but we can't stay here." "Come on." Jake led her off the stage and toward a side exit. He moved with purpose, like he had trained for exactly this situation. Sarilith followed, her heart pounding. Behind them, she could hear more explosions, more screaming. They made it into a corridor, but it was filled with smoke. The emergency systems were failing. Sarilith coughed, her eyes watering. "This way," Jake said, pulling her along. He seemed to know where he was going, navigating the corridor even in the darkness. They turned a corner and ran straight into three figures wearing combat armor. The armor was Valorian military grade, but the insignia was wrong. These were not royal guards. "Princess," one of them said, raising a weapon. "We're glad we found you." Sarilith's blood went cold. These were the attackers. They had come for her. Jake immediately stepped in front of her, putting himself between Sarilith and the weapons. "You don't want to do this," he said, his voice steady. "Get out of the way, human," the leader said. "This doesn't concern you. She's my wife. Everything about her concerns me. Then you can die with her. The princess is a traitor. She married a human and betrayed her people. We're here to fix that mistake." Sarilith realized what this was, a radical group opposed to the peace treaty. They wanted to restart the war, and her death would be the perfect trigger. "Listen to me," Jake said, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "Whatever your cause is, killing her won't help. It'll just make things worse. Move," the leader repeated, "or we shoot through you." Jake did not move. What happened next happened so fast that Sarilith barely saw it. Jake suddenly lunged forward faster than she thought possible. He grabbed the leader's weapon and twisted it away. The weapon fired, the blast hitting the ceiling. Jake used the momentum to throw the leader into one of the others. The third attacker fired at Jake. Sarilith screamed, but Jake had already rolled to the side. The blast hit the wall behind him. Jake kicked the attacker's legs out from under him and grabbed the fallen weapon. "Run!" he shouted at Sarilith, but she could not run. She was frozen, watching Jake fight three armed opponents. He moved like water, fluid and fast. Every movement had purpose. He was not fighting to kill, she realized. He was fighting to disable, to protect. This was what humans were really capable of. This was the warrior species that the galaxy feared. One attacker grabbed Jake from behind. Jake threw his head back, connecting with the attacker's face. The attacker stumbled, and Jake swept his legs. Another attacker came at him with a blade. Jake dodged, grabbed the attacker's arm, and used some kind of twisting motion that made the attacker cry out and drop the weapon. In less than a minute, all three attackers were on the ground, groaning. Jake stood over them, breathing hard, a cut above his eye bleeding. "Sarilith," he said urgently. "We have to go now, they ran." Behind them, Sarilith could hear the attackers getting up, calling for backup. The corridors were a maze, and the smoke was getting worse. Jake led them deeper into the station, away from the grand hall. They turned into a maintenance corridor. Jake was limping slightly, Sarilith noticed. "You're hurt," she said. "I'm fine," Jake said, but he was clearly in pain. They heard footsteps behind them. More attackers. Jake looked around frantically, then spotted a door marked with maintenance symbols. He tried it, locked. "Stand back," he said, and kicked the door hard. It took 3 kicks, but the door gave way. They stumbled inside and found themselves in a small equipment room filled with tools and repair supplies. Jake pushed a heavy storage unit in front of the door, blocking it. Then he leaned against the wall, wincing. "Let me see," Sarilith said, kneeling beside him. I said I'm fine. "You are bleeding. Let me see." Jake reluctantly showed her his leg. A piece of debris from one of the explosions had cut through his uniform and into his calf. It was bleeding steadily. Sarilith found a first aid kit on the wall and opened it. Her hands shook as she tried to clean the wound. "I do not know human medicine," she said helplessly. "It's okay," Jake said. He took the kit from her and applied pressure to stop the bleeding. His hands were steady, even though he must have been in pain. "I've had worse. Why did you do that?" Sarilith asked suddenly. "Why did you fight them? You could have been killed." Jake looked at her like she had asked why water was wet. "Because they were going to hurt you. I couldn't let that happen. But you barely know me. We have been married less than a month." "Doesn't matter," Jake said simply. "You're my wife. My responsibility, my friend, I hope." Something in Sarilith's chest felt tight. All her life she had been surrounded by guards who protected her, because it was their duty. But Jake had protected her because he wanted to. Because he cared. "When I was a child," Sarilith said quietly, "I heard stories about humans. They said humans were monsters. That they would hurt anyone who got in their way. That they were violent and cruel. And now," Jake asked, "now I think the stories were wrong. Or at least incomplete." She looked at him. "You are violent. But you are violent in defense of others. You are strong. But you use that strength to protect. The galaxy fears humans not because you are monsters, but because you care so fiercely about the people you choose to protect." Jake smiled despite the pain. That's the nicest thing anyone has ever said about humans. Outside the door, they heard footsteps and voices. The attackers were searching for them. Jake activated a device on his wrist, some kind of emergency beacon. "I sent a distress signal," he whispered. "Coalition forces and your Royal Guard should be here soon. We just need to hold out a little longer." "How long?" "I don't know. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe longer." The storage unit in front of the door shook. Someone was trying to force it open. Jake stood up, gritting his teeth against the pain in his leg. He positioned himself between Sarilith and the door once again. "Stay behind me," he said. "Jake, you are hurt. You should rest. I'll rest when you're safe." The door crashed open. 3 more attackers entered. But this time, Jake was ready. He grabbed a heavy tool from the shelf and used it as a weapon. He fought with everything he had, protecting Sarilith even as his injured leg threatened to give out. Sarilith realized she could not just stand there. She looked around frantically for anything that could help. She found a canister of some kind of industrial foam used for repairs. Without thinking, she ran forward and sprayed it at the attackers. The foam expanded rapidly, covering their visors and making it hard for them to see. Jake took advantage of the distraction, disarming 2 of them. But the 3rd attacker got past him and grabbed Sarilith. She struggled, but the attacker was strong. "No!" Jake roared. He lunged at the attacker with such force that they all went down in a heap. Jake punched the attacker once, twice, until he let go of Sarilith. Then suddenly the room was full of people. Royal Guards in Valorian armor, Coalition Marines in human combat gear. Velkoth was there, his weapon drawn, his face furious. "Sarilith!" he shouted, running to her. "I am fine," she gasped. "Jake." Jake protected me. Medical personnel rushed in. They tried to help Jake, but he pushed them away. "Help her first. Make sure she's okay." "I am fine," Sarilith insisted. "Help him, please." Finally, Jake let them treat his wound. Sarilith stayed by his side the entire time, holding his hand. He had protected her. When he could have run, when he could have saved himself, he had stayed. He had fought for her. As the medics bandaged his leg, Jake looked at Sarilith. "I told you I'd keep you safe," he said with a tired smile. "You did," Sarilith said. And for the first time, she said what she was really thinking. "Thank you, Jake, for everything." He squeezed her hand gently. "Always." The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Jake lay in a bed, his injured leg elevated and wrapped in bandages. The doctors said he would be fine in a few days, but he needed rest. Humans healed quickly, they explained. Something about their evolution on a dangerous planet had made them remarkably resilient. Sarilith sat in a chair beside his bed. She had been there for hours, refusing to leave even when the medical staff suggested she rest in her own quarters. Felkoth stood near the door, keeping watch like a guardian statue. "You should sleep," Jake said to her. His voice was tired but kind. "I'm not going anywhere." "I will stay," Saralith said firmly. Jake smiled. Stubborn. "I like that." The attack had been stopped. The radical group had been captured. It turned out they were a small faction of Valorian military officers who opposed the peace treaty. They had planned to kill Saralith and blame it on humans, hoping to restart the war, but their plan had failed, and now they would face justice. The peace treaty had been signed anyway in a smaller, more secure ceremony. Both empires had condemned the attack. If anything, it had strengthened the resolve for peace. Violence had not won. Understanding had. Over the next 3 days, Jake recovered in the medical bay. Saralith visited him every day, bringing him books and music from her culture. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood, about the palace gardens where she used to play. He told her about Earth's oceans, about the first time he saw a sunrise from space. On the 4th day, the doctors cleared Jake to return to their quarters. He walked with a slight limp, but he insisted he was fine. Saralith stayed close, ready to help if he needed it. When they entered their shared quarters, everything felt different. The space looked the same, but something had changed between them. Saralith could not quite name it, but she felt it in every interaction, every glance. That evening, they sat together on the couch in the living area. Jake had his injured leg propped up on a cushion. They were watching a film from Earth, something Jake called a comedy. Saralith did not understand all the jokes, but Jake's laughter was infectious. "I have been thinking," Saralith said during a quiet moment in the film. "About what?" "About us. About this marriage." Jake paused the film and turned to look at her. "Okay, what about it?" "We have been married for more than a month now. And I realize I have changed my mind about many things." "Like what?" "Like humans," Saralith said. "I was terrified of you at first. I thought you would be a monster. But you are not. You are kind and patient and brave. You risked your life to protect me." "I told you I would keep you safe," Jake said simply. "I know. And you did. But it was more than that." Saralith looked down at her hands. "You have given me space when I needed it. You have learned about my culture. You have made me laugh. You have become my friend. I'm glad," Jake said softly. "Because you've become my friend too." "But here is what I have been thinking about," Saralith continued. "We were married because of politics. Because our governments needed us to be. We had no choice in the matter." Jake's expression became guarded. "That's true. But now the treaty is signed. The peace is official. Our governments no longer need us to stay married. They have offered us the option to annul the marriage quietly. We could each return to our own worlds." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you want?" he asked finally. His voice was careful, neutral. Saralith looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the man who had learned to dance for her, who had protected her without hesitation, who had sat with her during panic attacks and bad dreams, who had become the best part of her days. "No," she said. "That is not what I want." Jake's eyes widened. "It's not? When I first learned about this marriage, I felt trapped. I felt like my life was being decided for me. And it was." Saralith took a deep breath. "But now I want to make my own decision. I want to choose." "Choose what?" "I choose you, Jake Morrison. Not because anyone is forcing me to. Not because of politics or peace treaties. I choose you because you are kind. Because you make me feel safe. Because when I imagine my future, I want you in it." Jake stared at her, and Saralith saw emotions flicker across his face. "Surprise, hope, joy, are you sure?" he asked. "Because this is a big decision. You could go home, marry someone from your own species, have a normal life." "I do not want a normal life," Saralith said. "I want this life." "With you?" Jake laughed, a sound full of relief and happiness. "I was so worried. I thought you were going to say you wanted to leave. Did you want me to stay?" "Of course I did," Jake said. "Saralith, these past weeks have been the best of my life. I know we started this marriage as strangers, but somewhere along the way you became important to me. Really important." "Then we agree," Saralith said. "We will stay married. But this time it is our choice." Jake reached out and gently took her hand. It was not the first time they had held hands, but this time it felt different. Before, it had been for show, for the cameras and the dignitaries. This time it was real. "I should probably tell you something," Jake said. "I'm being reassigned." The Coalition wants me to take a position as a diplomatic liaison. It means I'll be traveling between human space and Valorian space, helping to maintain the peace. That sounds important, Saralith said. It is. But it also means a lot of travel. Living on different stations and planets. Jake paused. I was wondering if you would come with me. As my partner. We could see the galaxy together. The idea excited Saralith more than she expected. I would like that. I have spent my whole life in the same places. It would be good to see new things. To explore? Then it's settled, Jake said with a smile. We're in this together. Together, Saralith repeated, and the word felt right. Over the following weeks, they prepared for their new life. Saralith learned more about human culture. Jake continued learning about Valorian traditions. They found ways to blend their two worlds, creating something unique that belonged to both of them. Saralith discovered that she enjoyed human food, especially something called chocolate. Jake learned to appreciate Valorian poetry. They watched films from both cultures. They taught each other games from their childhoods. One evening, Saralith was in the small kitchen area, trying to make a Valorian dish. She was not a good cook, and the dish was not turning out well. Jake came in and started helping, even though he had no idea what he was doing. They laughed at their combined incompetence and ended up ordering food from the station's restaurants instead. We make a terrible cooking team, Jake said, still laughing. We do, Saralith agreed. But I think we make a good team in other ways. Jake's expression became serious. Saralith, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? Really happy? Saralith thought about it. A month ago, she would have said happiness was impossible in this marriage. She had been so certain that her life was over, that she was doomed to misery. But now? Yes, she said, surprised by how true it was. I am happy. Are you? Very, Jake said. I know this wasn't how either of us planned our lives. But I'm glad it happened. I'm glad I met you. I am glad too, Saralith said. They stood there in the kitchen looking at each other. Then slowly, Jake leaned in. Saralith's heart raced, but not from fear, from anticipation. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning, full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Was that okay? Jake asked. More than okay, Saralith replied. Their new assignment began 2 weeks later. They boarded a diplomatic vessel designed to accommodate multiple species. Their quarters were larger this time, with a view of space that took Saralith's breath away. They would spend the next year traveling to different worlds, helping to build bridges between the Terran Coalition and the Valorian Empire. On their first night aboard the ship, they stood at the window together, watching the stars stream past as the ship traveled through faster than light space. Nervous? Jake asked, putting his arm around her shoulders. Saralith leaned into him, feeling safe and content. A little, but mostly excited. Me too. We're going to do great things, you and I. Yes, Saralith said. We are. She thought about how far she had come, how she had trembled with fear when she first learned she would marry a human, how she had believed the stories about humans being monsters, how wrong she had been. Humans were not monsters. They were complicated, strong, caring beings who protected what they loved with fierce devotion. And Jake had taught her that love could grow in unexpected places, that duty could become joy, that fear could transform into trust. What are you thinking about? Jake asked. About how I used to be afraid of humans, Saralith said. About how much I have learned. And what have you learned? Saralith smiled. That the scariest thing about humans is not their strength or their violence. It is their capacity to love. Because once a human decides to care about someone, they will move mountains for them. They will face any danger. They will give everything they have. Is that scary? Jake asked with a grin. It was at first, Saralith admitted. But now? Now it is the thing I treasure most about you. Jake kissed the top of her head. I love you, Saralith. I know it's probably too soon to say that, but it's true. Saralith's heart swelled. Love. She had not expected love. But here it was, growing between them like a flower in unlikely soil. I love you too, she said, testing the words. They felt right. They felt true. 3 years passed. Saralith and Jake became known throughout the galaxy as the bridge between two peoples. They traveled to dozens of worlds, negotiated treaties, solved disputes, and built friendships across species lines. They became a symbol of what was possible when different cultures came together with open minds and open hearts. They faced challenges, of course, There were still those who opposed the peace, who wanted to see them fail. There were cultural misunderstandings and difficult moments. But they faced everything together, as partners, as friends, as lovers. Sarilith learned that marriage was not about being forced together. It was about choosing each other, every single day. It was about building something new from two separate lives. It was about growing together instead of apart. And Jake learned that sometimes the best things in life came from unexpected places, that the mission he had dreaded had given him the greatest gift, that the princess who had trembled at the sight of him had become the strongest, bravest person he knew. On the anniversary of their wedding, they returned to Concordia Prime. They walked through the grand hall, now repaired from the attack. They stood where they had stood 3 years ago, when they were strangers bound by duty. "Do you remember how scared we both were?" Jake asked. "I remember," Sarilith said. "I thought my life was ending, but it was actually beginning." "Mine too." They held hands and looked out at the stars through the great windows. Somewhere out there in the vast galaxy, there were more challenges waiting, more adventures, more opportunities to build peace and understanding, but they would face all of it together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because they had chosen each other, chosen love, chosen hope over fear. Princess Sarilith had once trembled when she learned her groom would be human. But now, standing beside Jake Morrison, her husband, and her heart, she did not tremble at all. She stood strong, confident, and deeply, wonderfully happy, because humans, she had learned, were not to be feared. They were to be loved, trusted, and cherished. And she would spend the rest of her life proving that two different worlds could become one beautiful future.